spoke of the government policy responses being somewhat sufficient. They've been quite varied. So are some governments, in your mind, doing it better than others around the globe?
Yeah, it's a question of whether they're being sufficient. And I think it does vary by country, right? I think you're absolutely right. If you went to emerging markets, we are deeply concerned around emerging markets. First of all, the healthcare response is much harder. They don't have healthcare systems. It's very easy for their systems to become overwhelmed. And of course, their central banks and their governments do not have the firepower to deal with the economic downturn. So there are scenarios where it could become very, very nasty economically. And from a human perspective, from a healthcare perspective, it could be very, very nasty in emerging markets. The hope is that either we get to a vaccine quite quickly or their climates are more conducive for the virus spreading more slowly. So let's hope that it doesn't get as bad in those markets. But if we go to countries like Australia and the UK and the United States, the central banks have acted very, very powerfully. So we're very unlikely to have the financial crisis of a shutting down of the financial system. Our banking systems are in very good shape. They're being very, very prudent. We saw National Australia Bank this week raise more capital and cut its dividend. While it's disappointing they've cut their dividend, it does mean that the financial system is going to be in good shape with our major banks, and I think the big banks in America are in good shape as well, and they are in the UK. The governments have stepped in, and I would say they have covered a portion of what I call the output gap, this missing part of the economic output when the economies have been shut down. They're largely compensating, as I mentioned before, individuals, but they are not compensating businesses for their full loss. They're helping at the wages level, but they're not helping with the rest of their expenses. I think it's unlikely, as I was mentioning, we're going to get this V-shaped recovery. And depending how it plays out, more support may be required. So while I'm going is they probably haven't done enough to really stop a sort of recession happening here. When we open up the economies and 6 months down the track, there may well be further stimulus programs to help demand come back. And we haven't seen those happen. So maybe they're going to come with some more support for the economies that will help the economies sort of stave off the worst sort of economic downturn. But the longer this goes on, the more economic damage and the more that has to get repaired. And the shorter we can get up and operating, the better we'll all be. But that's a healthcare question. At the end of the day, it's all good to hope that we can get these up and operating, but we don't know when we get people moving around again whether the virus is going to start spreading again. And that happened in Singapore.